Hello, welcome to the Hobby Breakfast Show. It's Arnold here with OT, and we're here to ask the question: what is Pillage? Um, Pillage is a game.
It's a good start. It's a good start.
Oh, I can't really remember how I start these videos. We didn't really make many in then.
No, I don't think there's an agreed sort of
We
norm
haven't.
regarding these. Although I did notice in the recent army review thing, you were like OT as is tradition, and I was like, I'm not completely sure it is tradition. I think it's just something that's been arbitrarily decided.
No, I think it is tradition.
Okay,
As
we
of
don't approve of gaslighting.
the two videos we've made in that series, it's now a tradition.
Mm.
So this is a game which I have seen and observed, and that's pretty much why we're doing this video. The reason I thought it'd be interesting to talk about is because it's supposedly very similar to a game that we have played quite a lot of, not
Pillage
Star
boy.
Wars Legion or Halo Flashpoint, indeed, but Middle Earth Strategy Battle Game. And the parallels between this and MESBG, MUSBG, have been something which everyone seems to comment on. So I've gone and done a little bit of reading about it, and we're going to introduce it and talk about it. So what is Pillage? Pillage is a historical game. It's based on the early Middle Ages, but then they have also done an expansion into the end of antiquity. So it's sort of Dark Ages esque, if you want to use the historically inaccurate term for it. And in terms of therefore its story narrative, it doesn't really have one. It's more just about hypothetical uh, battles, etc., that would have happened. And its main focus is, and you're going to be shocked to hear this, OT. Its main focus is about pillaging stuff. I
Um,
know
it's good branding, if nothing else.
it is. It's written by a French guy. I think it's
Oh,
originally written in French and then translated.
okay.
So they the deep lore of pillage, which I found out by my research. And in terms of factions, it has all of the big swingers of the Dark Age setting: Vikings, Anglo Saxons, ooh, the Normans, and then you've also got like the Carolingians, which my assumption is French game. They're probably, big in France. Not so
Still,
not not so big. Yes, even now the Carolingians are big in France. Anyway, yeah, so it's pretty much there's a lot of games in this historical time period, and I feel like this one, the main thing that stands out is it's been backed by a company that makes plastic miniatures, and I think that's basically why it's appealing. And if we talk about the miniatures, that company is Victrix Miniatures. They do a really good range. I'll have some photos that will appear as we're talking. They're multi-part hard plastics. They're pretty good quality. There are other companies that make 28mm models of this time period, but the Victrix ones are very nice. And yeah, and pretty much this game, I think, is basically a vehicle via which they can sell these models. And they've got pretty big range now. They've got like all of the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings and the Normans, and then they've got like Scots now, and they're doing the Carolingians, and I think they're doing like the Irish or something. I mean, a little bit of me, and this is where my slightly cynical um historical brain ruins everyone's fun and says they're basically just the fucking same, because
right.
a shield's a shield and a
Okay.
helmet's a helmet. So all of these different fucking boxes that claim to be selling you something different, like they all just fought with the same bloody weapons. But anyway, they look very nice. But anyway, the main thing which I think is going to be interesting is gameplay and rules. So it's a little bit smaller scale. I would say it's going to be about the same size as like a Battle Companies game for MESBG. And it's probably going to take about the same amount of time as a game of Middle Earth Strategy Battle game. And it has copied, I would say, quite a lot of mechanics, but not all of them. So it's got the same you go, I go, but it's phase based. So one person does all their moves, then another person does, then one person shoots, then etc. But there are a few differences. And I think it'd be interesting to see whether we think they're good changes on Middle Earth or not. So, first of all, the equipment you give your model determines its stats. Thoughts? Good change? Bad change?
But is that not, if we're comparing it to MESBG, is that not the same to a degree?
This is even more extreme. So, for example,
Right.
heavy armor gives you your movement stat.
Right, I see.
So
Okay.
somebody in heavy armor moves slower than somebody in no armor.
So are there are there individual unit types, or do you just have like a generic unit that you then give equipment to?
You have your generic guy that you
Right.
give equipment to. And then for certain factions, as I understand it, you then might have unique others. So I think the Vikings might have like a berserker type guy.
Okay.
But for the most part, I think it's a little bit more like your bolt actions where it's a guy's a guy, and then you give him equipment which gives him different stats.
Okay. I mean, I think if the focus is more on a thematic experience than a competitive experience, i.e., people
Which
are
it very much
not
is.
people are not as incentivized to min max, I think it's a really good idea. I think obviously if it was to ever become more competitive, it might become a bit more problematic.
I don't think it ever will be competitive. Other things that introduce it. No dual role.
Oh.
So you still pair up combats, but you just roll to hit. And then the hit roll is determined based on what weapon you've got and what armor they've got. And then they roll a save roll. But there's no arbitrary dice to determine who gets the chance to hit. I think you just see if somebody dies.
Weird.
And then there are some like things you can do. So I think there's like a similar to in Middle Earth, like a shielding mechanic, which makes it more likely for you to survive, and then you can break off from combat that way. But unlike Middle Earth, it's a little bit more like once you're locked into combat, unless somebody does that, you're just gonna keep swinging turn after turn until somebody dies, and there's no dual rolls, which is interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about that. On the one hand, I kind of like that you don't have the because sometimes the dual roll in Middle Earth a bit of a feel bad when. But then it can also be the really cool cinematic moment when the underdog wins the dual roll sort of thing. Just having them swing at each other does feel a little bit kind of like.
So it's interesting that it's you go, I go until the melee, which is then simultaneous. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just an interesting decision.
Well, that's how Middle Earth works, though, right? It's you go, I go till melee, where it's simultaneous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess heroic combat and things that can allow you to control the order things happen in maybe a bit more of an order. Whereas I guess this would feel a bit more like a brawl, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Charging's different. So charging, you have, rather than just being you move into base contact with them, you declare that a model's charging. The
God,
model
there's so
being
many steps.
the model being charged, there are 6 steps, I believe, to
It's crazy.
the official charge. But I'm not going to go through all 6. I'm just going to give more of a. The model being charged can react. So they might, for example, throw a spear at you.
A closing shot.
Or they might run away. Which I think is actually really interesting, because one of the sucky things about Middle Earth is the person who wins priority gets to just do all of the charging.
Yeah.
Whilst here, it's like you actually have a way to be like, actually, I'm going to react to your charge, and it might not necessarily be beneficial to you.
Do you get to choose if you react, or do you just have to?
I think you can choose to just stand, right?
Okay.
But I don't 100% know. My understanding of it is that you choose your option, and one of them would just be kind of just to be like, yeah, let's have combat. And then the person charging rolls a dice, and they add that to their movement. So you could declare a charge at somebody who's out of range, which again is one of the nice things, because in Middle Earth, it's like, if you're playing Mare, for example, somebody who plays competitive Middle Earth, and all competitive Middle Earth gamers, they will fully be like, you have a 6-inch move, so I can just sit 6.1 inches away from you. And that's like a completely legit thing to do in Middle Earth. Like that's just how the game works. The variance here is interesting, isn't it? Because it's a bit like, well, you could be ultra cautious and say they've got a 6-inch move. The max they could roll on the charge is a 6, so I will stay 12.1. But obviously, you've got that kind of option to be like, wow, I don't know. I think it's different enough, isn't it, there in the charge, that you've got a little bit of kind of.
It feels more of an interactive, like, it feels like more of an interactive and less of like a foregone conclusion. Like, in MESBG, when like somebody wins priority or wins the move off, you're like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll just sit back and watch now. Whereas this, it feels like it's a more involved process, maybe.
Yeah. It has made me think, like, in Middle Earth, should a model that has like a throwing weapon have the option to use it both charging and being charged?
But then that's like Overwatch in 40k, right, or something. That's like,
but just as an example of like how you might spice things up.
It could be a cool ability for like a legendary Legion lol, for a new army or something, like, or an ability for a model to have.
Yeah, because they kind of they've tested the water a little bit of that, because there's that one army where they just roll a 6, right?
Yeah, it's the Rivendell Numenor force, isn't it? Yeah.
So there's that kind that has been, they have dipped their toe in the water of that as a concept.
Yeah, it might just be too hard to balance. Like, I think you need quite specific armies for it to be, because I think that is the caveat with all like MESBG mechanics, is that they do actually need to be balanced, because there are enough people who take the game very seriously that they need to consider that.
The nerds, yeah. And then the final thing which stood out to me for Pillage was that there's a whole phase of the game dedicated to burning stuff.
The fire phase.
The fire phase, which, I mean, fair play, like full commit to the theme of pillaging. I don't know whether it warranted a whole phase, but fair dues. Yeah, and game type wise,
game fun test.
It's pretty standard warband versus warband fare. There do seem to be rules for like having like 3 players or 4 players, which is always good when they think about that. and they've released loads of additional scenarios online for free. So yeah, an interesting little game. I can definitely see the appeal because it's like you pick up one box and then you're done.
Yeah.
So it's like you spend 30 quid, you get all the miniatures you could ever possibly need for whatever combination of guy with chainmail and axe you want, and then you just do weird little scenarios. You probably do need a lot of terrain.
Yes.
If you want to burn down houses, you are going to need
Smoke.
some houses and smoke. But yeah, it looks like good fun.
It looks quite accessible.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely accessible, easy to play. So yeah. A fun little thing, and it's interesting to see that there are people who are definitely building on what MESBG does well and have been like, this is a good system for this sandboxy stuff. Let's take those ideas and strip it back down to maybe kind of something more like what it was when it was first released.
Yeah.
That's what this feels like to me. It's like, this is Middle Earth before all of the bullshit has been like bolted on top. It's like, this is the stripped back, like bare bones of the system without magic, heroics, all of that stuff. Not that those are bad things, Middle Earth, but like that's just sort of the vibe.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily the case that more stuff is a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something that appeals to some players and won't to others. And will, like, I think the reason I said this one looks accessible is it doesn't have like a million things that you need to, like, a load of special rules and magic and all the different heroics and all that stuff you need to learn. Like, it does look maybe a bit more straightforward.
So there you go. Try it out if you're interested. If anyone's played it, let us know. I feel like maybe it would be something that we'd look at in a long down the road.
That. You've already got you've got 27 fucking games. You haven't played any of them.
The thing is with this one though, is we wouldn't need to buy anything, right? Because
what, we just use MESBG models?
Well, yeah, Mez already bought like 1 million blooming Viking models, hasn't he, for his Dunlendings? You just use Rohan and your ruffians.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think anyone who's got a Middle Earth collection that includes Rohan or Dunlendings, just use those models.
Yeah. Well, you could even just play it as MESBG armies, as in like use it as Rohan versus Dunlendings and just play as like different.
You just using orcs as well. You could very easily use this for some thematic fantasy, low fantasy stuff, couldn't you? Very good. Wow. Thanks for watching. We'll be back maybe with one of these. This is like the weirdest series that we have, isn't it?
Yeah, we have basically have three very poorly connected series running semi-simultaneously in order to just completely fuck the algorithm to the point where they don't even know who to recommend us to anymore.
Weirdly though, these ones do quite well.
Yeah, because, well, presumably it's pushing them to an entirely different audience to the rest of our videos.
Perfect.